What's new in CloudBees CI 2.319.2.7? Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. On Tuesday, January 18th, 2022, CloudBees CI 2.319.2.7 was released. Now, if you take a few moments, you can go back and watch a live stream that I did with Mark Waite on January 14th about the Jenkins LTS 2.319.2 release. As you go through that video, it will give you a lot more detail about the things that happened just within the Jenkins project. If you've never visited the release notes for CloudBees CI before, let me walk you through how to do that. We're going to start at docs.cloudbees.com. We'll click on Documentation, CloudBees CI, and then on this documentation dropdown, go to the bottom and select Release Notes. Now you'll notice that there was a release on January 18th, 2022, but there was also a release on January 12th, 2022. Now we're going to be looking at both of these releases because they are both based on 2.319.2. There was a fix specifically for traditional platforms that we'll talk about once we get into the release notes. And let's go ahead and get into those release notes right now. If we click on traditional platforms for 2.7, what you're going to see here in the resolved issues is that there were some missing packages from the CloudBees CI container images, such as get, IP route, and a couple of other binaries that needed to be there within the image. So for this 0.7 release, the only thing that changed was the container images just for traditional platforms. If we take a look at the release notes for the modern platforms, we'll see here that there is no changes for the 0.7, but the upgrade notes calls out there was a fix for the container images used by CloudBees CI for traditional platforms. There was nothing that affected the CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms. So again, in this 0.7 release, the only changes that apply are to the traditional container images. So let's go back over and go down to the 0.5 release because that is where all of the other changes happened. So we'll scroll down to 0.5. First off, you'll notice that this was a security release. And if we take a look at traditional platforms, and we'll go through the traditional platforms first, and then we'll go over to the modern cloud platforms, and we will call out the different items there that aren't included in traditional. The very first item that you'll see here is that there was a CloudBees security advisory. And if we open that up in a new tab, what we're going to see here is there were a number of fixes contained within this release. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but there were quite a few. And if you want to go through and read all of these, again, to access the security advisory, go to the release notes, and at the top of the release notes, you'll see this link off to CloudBees Security Advisory 2021-01-12, which really should be 2022-01-12. By the time you're watching this, it may already be fixed. So let's take a look at the new features. What we have here are two new items that are part of preview for CASC, or configuration as code. And if you take a look at this very first one, you can now create items based on templates. Up until this point, that hasn't been possible. For the second item, the Operations Center now gives you the ability to create the objects for both shared agents and shared cloud. Again, both of these features are in preview. Try them out. Let us know what you think. If you run into any issues, contact CloudBees support. Now let's scroll down into the feature enhancements. And there were a few things here, but I want to call out one specifically. And this is the Restart Aborted Builds plugin has been improved. There are a number of items here that are called out specifically around when a controller is restored from a backup or when a pipeline build is started after a backup is taken. So it's all around this backup and restore process. Again, I'll leave this to you for reading, but if you have been using this Restart Aborted Builds plugin and you've had some issues around both backups and restores, the changes to this plugin may help you out. Let's go ahead and scroll down to our resolved section. Now this top item is specific to traditional. Prior to this release, an item for managed controller provisioning was showing up. Now, in the traditional platform scenario, there is no concept of a managed controller. That's only available for modern cloud platforms. So in this release, that item has now been removed. One other item that I want to call out is around pipeline template catalog. And prior to this release, there was a link missing. So if you have created either a pipeline job or a multi-branch job and you had used a pipeline template catalog, over on the left nav, there was no link over to the template that was being used. So in this release, that was fixed. Now let's scroll down to the bottom of this page about known issues. Now we've already talked about the one thing that was fixed in 7, which was missing packages in CloudBees CI. So that one is resolved in 0.7. So if you are currently running your CloudBees CI for traditional within Docker, then make sure that you're using the 0.7 release. Now, if you're using CloudBees CI for modern cloud platforms, you're completely fine. But you can go ahead and use 0.7 if you wish. Now, for this other item, there is currently a known issue about duplicate pipeline template catalogs showing up if you're using configuration as code. It's currently being reviewed and will be fixed in an upcoming version. Finally, for the upgrade notes. Prior to this release, users were not distinguished from groups in the Rbac configuration. So in the case where you had a user that was named Fred, and you also had a group that was named Fred, Rbac could not figure out if it was a user or a group or what it was. So in this version, all of that has been resolved. However, there is a migration step that you should go through and follow in the case that you do have this set up. Now, many of you probably don't have that scenario, but just in case you do, you'll be warned within your Rbac configuration of, hey, you need to take care of this. And it's a quick and easy fix for you to go ahead and resolve. Additionally, if you are using the Active Directory plugin for your authentication, there are some new steps that you need to go through, review these notes, and apply them as necessary to your environment. Now let's head over to the Modern Cloud Platforms release notes and take a look at the items that are specific to Modern Cloud Platform. The first item that is specific to Modern Cloud Platform is down in the feature enhancements. First off, with this version, 2.312.2.5 is the beginning number. It also applies to the 0.7, is that now Kubernetes 1.22 is now supported. But at the same time that we're picking up support for Kubernetes 1.22, support for Kubernetes 1.14 through 1.17 has now been dropped. Also, support for OpenShift 4.8 was added, but much like Kubernetes, support for OpenShift 4.2 through 4.5 has now been dropped as well. There are a few other feature enhancements, but I wanted to call out that one specifically around the Kubernetes support. Again, 122 is now supported. Support for 114 through 117 has been dropped. Let's scroll down to resolved issues. And once we get down to there, one of the things that was fixed was a problem with Hibernation Monitor. There was an issue where if you had a controller hibernated and those controllers were in separate namespaces, they weren't always being woken up. So in this release, that has been resolved. Take your time as you're going through the release notes and see what items could apply to you prior to even upgrading your environments. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.